In the bustling animal shelter, where countless stories of hope and despair intermingled, one dog's constant crying stood out. Baxter, a beautiful gray pit bull, seemed inconsolable, his whimpers echoing through the hallways. Dr. Nolan, a seasoned veterinarian, visited the shelter for a routine checkup, but found himself drawn to Baxter's kennel, sensing that the dog's distress was more than just a longing for a home. It was only after a thorough examination that Dr. Nolan uncovered the heart-wrenching truth behind Baxter's tears, leading him to make an unexpected decision. All the staff members of the shelter where Baxter lived knew about his heartbreaking cries. It was kind of hard not to know about them, actually, as they echoed through the whole building. Frederique, one of the staff members, had addressed them to her manager many times, asking if they could get Baxter checked, but he kept refusing, saying it was just because Baxter was a drama queen. Frederique knew there could be more to it. Baxter didn't only howl, he actually cried tears as well. His eyes were covered in gooey mush from all the crying, something her manager didn't know because she was the only one who checked up on Baxter every day, giving him cuddles and drying his tears. She felt incredibly sorry for the poor animal, but didn't know what to do. One day, the shelter staff was informed that a veterinarian would be visiting to give some of the animals a routine check. Hopeful, Frederique had grabbed the information sheet, looking for Baxter's name. She reviewed the list of animals 5 times before the truth she dreaded finally sunk in. Baxter's name was not on the list. Frederique was heartbroken for him. How could her manager do this to the poor animal? Was he enjoying it or something? She shot an angry glance at him when he wasn't looking. She couldn't do more than that, as she didn't want to be fired. If she didn't work at the shelter anymore, no one would give Baxter his extra love and cuddles. No, she had to stay for him. The vet arrived when Baxter was still sleeping. He began to work down his list, going by every kennel that was on it. Little kittens recently brought in needed medicine for their sneezing, a dog required a blood test, and other animals had various needs. The vet worked quickly, and after a few hours, Frederique heard Baxter's howls. The vet was intrigued, but the manager dismissed it as a dog wanting a treat. Frederique insisted it was Baxter, a sweet pit bull, and expressed concern about his constant crying. The manager insisted nothing was wrong, distracting the vet from checking on Baxter. Throughout the day, Frederique observed Dr. Nolan's torn reactions to Baxter's cries. Later, Frederique discreetly invited Dr. Nolan to check on Baxter during the manager's break. She hoped the vet might find something treatable. When her manager confronted her, he warned her not to talk to Dr. Nolan about Baxter, threatening her job. During the break, Frederique led Dr. Nolan to Baxter's secluded kennel. She revealed that Baxter was moved away due to the manager's annoyance with his cries. Dr. Nolan and Frederique approached Baxter cautiously, entering his dimly lit kennel. Dr. Nolan knelt down, extending a gentle hand, and Baxter cautiously approached. The vet examined Baxter carefully, speaking soothingly to reassure the distressed pit bull. As Dr. Nolan worked, Baxter's tension eased, and the compassionate touch seemed to convey a promise of safety. Dr. Nolan continued his gentle examination, and Baxter's trust grew visibly. The initial hesitation transformed into cautious acceptance, and a small miracle occurred when Baxter's tail tentatively wagged. Frederique, witnessing this bond forming, felt her heart swell with hope. With Baxter's approval, Dr. Nolan proceeded with a more detailed examination, checking joints and examining eyes and ears. The vet's concern deepened as he observed Baxter's responses, and Frederique anxiously watched, hands clasped. Frederique, stationed by the door, remained alert to any approaching sounds. Balancing the anxiety of being discovered against her commitment to Baxter, she felt her resolve strengthening despite the risks. Time seemed suspended in Baxter's kennel, with every second carrying the weight of potential discovery. Dr. Nolan worked efficiently but couldn't rush the thorough diagnosis needed. Frederique's eyes flickered to the clock, aware of the manager's return approaching. During the examination, Dr. Nolan and Frederique exchanged whispers filled with worry. The vet expressed the need for more time, and Frederique, torn between fear and determination, sought ways to delay the manager. As Dr. Nolan palpated Baxter's abdomen, a sudden clatter in the hallway made all freeze. The tension escalated as they listened to discern whether it was the manager or routine shelter sounds. The door swung open abruptly, revealing the furious manager. The atmosphere shifted from focused care to defensive alarm. Dr. Nolan's hands froze on Baxter, who whimpered, and Frederic turned to face the manager's wrath. A moment of stillness ensued, shattered by the manager's angry demand for an explanation. His accusations were pointed at Dr. Nolan and Frederic, and the air filled with unsaid accusations and fear. The manager stormed in, accusing Dr. Nolan of unauthorized checks and Frederic of complicity. Despite the manager's rage, Dr. Nolan remained calm and defended his actions, emphasizing Baxter's need for attention. The manager, undeterred, threatened Frederic with termination, and she complied, torn between loyalty to Baxter and the risk to her job. Frederic's departure felt like betrayal, and as she left, her mind raced for ways to continue helping. In a moment of distraction, she slipped into a storage closet, listening anxiously to the ongoing conversation outside, her heart pounding with fear and hope. Nolan aimed to make a difference for Baxter. Dr. Nolan's voice was steady and insistent. "Baxter is in pain, and it's our duty to help him." The manager retorted, frustrated. "We have dozens of animals here. I can't justify the cost for one." Their debate clashed over perspectives, one rooted in compassion and ethical duty, the other in shelter management realities. Despite resistance, Dr. Nolan persisted, emphasizing ethical standards. "Turning a blind eye to suffering is not an option. We must do what's right, not what's easy," he argued, his calm contrasting the manager's agitation. In the closet, Frederic held her breath, hanging on every word. The manager remained unyielding. "Rules and budgets are in place for a reason," he countered, firm and closed to arguments. "We can't make exceptions." The impasse held tension, critical for Baxter's future. Crouched in the dark, Frederic strained to hear every word. The closet was cramped, and the smell of cleaning supplies lingered, but discomfort was the least of her concerns. Every sentence felt like a lifeline for Baxter, and she clung to them, hoping Dr. Nolan's words would sway the manager. Outside, the debate intensified. Dr. Nolan's frustration showed. "How can we call ourselves a shelter if we don't shelter those in need?" The manager retorted. "We have to think about the bigger picture, the other animals." A verbal tug-of-war echoed down the hallway over Baxter's fate. Dr. Nolan regained composure. "Baxter's suffering isn't just policy, it's a matter of rights. The right to comfort, to care," he stated firmly. "We have a moral obligation to every creature under our roof." His words were a beacon, reminding of higher principles. There was a pause, and then the manager's voice softened, tinged with uncertainty. "It's just, we have so many to think about," he faltered. Frederic sensed a shift. Dr. Nolan's advocacy was cracking the manager's resistance. Dr. Nolan seized the moment, his voice infused with a passionate plea. "Imagine Baxter as not just one of many, but as someone's future companion, a being capable of love and joy. We have the power to heal him, to give him that future." In the darkness, Frederic felt a surge of hope. The manager regained composure. "I understand your point, but the shelter operates on a tight budget. We can't afford to treat every case like this." The words were practical, reflecting the constant struggle to balance limited resources. Dr. Nolan responded immediately and passionately. "But consider the greater cost of neglect," he urged. "Ignoring Baxter's pain doesn't just harm him, it diminishes us, our humanity. We can't let financial constraints blind us to suffering. We must find a way." His plea highlighted the ethical costs at stake. Continuing his advocacy, Dr. Nolan spoke of Baxter's condition with conviction. "Baxter's well-being should be our priority. He's in pain, and we have the means to alleviate it. To do otherwise would be a failure of our duty as caregivers." His words were a testament to his commitment. Despite Dr. Nolan's impassioned reasoning, the manager remained resistant. His voice conveyed weariness and resolve. "My hands are tied by the shelter's policies and budget. I can't make exceptions." It was a battle between practicality and compassion, with high stakes for Baxter. Sensing the critical moment, Dr. Nolan made one final appeal. "I understand the challenges you face," he acknowledged. "But Baxter's situation is urgent. Let's work together to find a solution. Compassion doesn't have to be a casualty of budget constraints." His voice carried hope that compassion could overcome financial and bureaucratic hurdles. Dr. Nolan's tone turned solemn. "Baxter can't speak for himself, so we must be his voice. His suffering is silent but profound." He described Baxter's subtle signs of distress, emphasizing the need for care and comfort. "Every whimper, every shiver speaks volumes. We can't ignore his plea because he whispers it in silence." With each word, Dr. Nolan painted a vivid picture of Baxter's plight, his need for care and comfort. "Imagine the constant pain, the confusion, the fear Baxter must feel. He doesn't understand why he's hurting or if it will ever end. We have the power to change that, to offer him relief." Dr. Nolan's emotional portrayal aimed to touch both the heart of the matter and the listener. The urgency in Dr. Nolan's voice grew. "Baxter's condition won't wait for budget approvals or better times. His pain is present, persistent, and worsening. Every day we delay, he suffers more." Dr. Nolan's words resonated with the haunting echoes of Baxter's cries, emphasizing the stakes. "We must act, and we must act now." The manager, silent, his expression inscrutable, faced a challenge to the status quo. It was a moment of reflection, internal struggle. The weight of the decision, the moral implications, were clear and pressing. As the conversation dwindled, the manager finally spoke, his voice low. "I need to think about this. It's not just about Baxter. It's about every animal here." He requested until tomorrow, leaving a sliver of hope. Dr. Nolan nodded, understanding the complexity. The conversation ended, but Baxter's fate remained unresolved. After a moment of heavy silence, Dr. Nolan decided on full disclosure. "I suspect Baxter suffers from a chronic condition causing his constant distress," he revealed. His steady voice conveyed the gravity of the revelation, explaining symptoms and potential causes. The manager's eyes widened, and Frederic, still hidden, gasped silently. The possibility of a chronic condition hadn't crossed their minds. The revelation shifted the manager's stance, softening it as Baxter's pain became undeniable. Dr. Nolan's diagnosis was more than a medical statement. It testified to Baxter's silent suffering. The manager, once firm and authoritative, now carried a hint of doubt in his voice. I didn't realize," he murmured. Baxter's condition forced him to reconsider his stance, marking a subtle but significant shift. With Dr. Nolan's revelation, a new understanding dawned. The manager's eyes reflected a growing empathy. Baxter's cries transformed from a nuisance to a plea for help. The next day, the manager reluctantly approved. Dr. Nolan wasted no time, creating a treatment plan for Baxter, offering immediate relief and long-term therapy. The first dose brought cautious optimism. As days passed, small but positive signs of improvement emerged. Baxter's whimpers decreased, replaced by quiet restfulness. His eyes, once clouded with pain, revealed glimpses of his gentle spirit. The bond between Dr. Nolan and Baxter strengthened. Fear turned into trust, with wagging tails and nuzzles. Frederic witnessed Baxter's transformation with awe and joy, offering gentle comfort. Watching Baxter's return to health filled Frederic with gratitude and hope. Baxter's cries lessened, moments of peace prolonged. The journey was long, the outcome uncertain, but there was hope for a pain-free future. Baxter's resilience and the care from Dr. Nolan and Frederic turned the tide. Hope became a beacon guiding them through recovery. The manager's perspective subtly shifted over time. Witnessing Baxter's recovery and the care from Dr. Nolan and Frederic made him see the animals as beings deserving of compassion. This realization sparked a profound personal transformation, influencing procedures and individualized care throughout the shelter. Staff members voiced concerns, fostering a more compassionate and ethical approach to animal care. The shelter underwent a gradual transformation, inspired by one dog's plight that opened their eyes to a better way. The day Baxter left the shelter was bittersweet. Saying goodbye to the brave pit bull, whom Frederic had grown to love, proved more challenging than expected. Tears streamed down her face as she hugged him one last time, recognizing the end of one chapter and the beginning of another for Baxter. Dr. Nolan, Baxter's constant advocate and healer, decided to adopt him. Having seen Baxter through his darkest days, Dr. Nolan couldn't bear to part with the dog who had shown such courage and trust. Leaving the shelter together marked a moment of pure joy, ensuring Baxter's journey to a forever home filled with love and care. Baxter's transformation from a scared, pained creature to a beloved pet symbolized hope and the profound connection between humans and animals. His story left an indelible mark on the shelter, serving as a reminder that compassion can change lives. Every animal, no matter how hopeless their situation seems, deserves a chance for happiness and health. Baxter's journey from despair to hope stood as a testament to the power of love and care.